Hey guys, welcome back. I think I did a nightly video last time too. I can't remember, but this right now is like the only time I have left for majority of my own personal activities. So we try to make the most of them, or the most of the time I have. But I just did a post on Patreon. I kind of was talking, a little bit about being of service, right? And I'm going to tie it more into Christ in this video. So I want to talk about that and the effects of what have been playing out really in what's told as our history, right? I've talked about, I think Howdy mentioned how if you can't remember your own memories or your own history, if it's largely false, if it seems false, then you're in some kind of dream, right? There doesn't seem to be a fluid timeline in dreams. We kind of just show up and we're piecing the situations together, and then we have to essentially continue in some sort of fluidity of events that happen throughout the dream, right? They change so fluidly yet so illogically sometimes, although some people do report to have logical dreams for logical continuation in the timeline. But I want to discuss kind of the Christ effect. Now I was looking at the Rubik's Cube, and I've mentioned in prior videos how the Rubik's Cube really is a large analogy of our own tesseract that we reside in, right? And it's like a cube, and it has made of smaller cubes, right? And you gotta line all those cubes up to match the color on each face, right? There's 6 faces to the cube, 6 colors, and the cube in the middle doesn't change, right? So that one shows you what the color of the face is supposed to be. Now there are certain techniques, and when initially starting, you want to get each face to kind of line up in a T, right? So the top row will be showing the colors that are supposed to match the face, the middle square, and then a line down. I'm not sure if it's every face or like only 3 out of 6, but you will notice a T pattern. Now this T is a cross, right? We all know it as the Christian cross. Maybe the T is shifted to a lowercase t. But it's very interesting how that signifies that things are beginning to align, right? The cube is reordering itself. So could this like crucifixion event have been a sort of sign that things were shifting out of chaos and into order, right? Are we shifting out of Satan's era, right? Satan's chaos, the AI, right? And back into the Son of God, the Son that destroys the AI. Because that's what seems to be happening in this loop. AI takes over, Son wipes it out. AI takes over, Son wipes it out. And it's very interesting because our timeline seems to have been wiped with this event, as if like it's some sort of cover-up. Because back in the day, from what I gathered, that it was written on buildings, it started out as an I or a J. I think that J transformed into an I. Right? I for Jesus, and J for Jesus. So maybe the I into the J. But then that turned into a 1. Now it used to be like I 700, right? So 700 AD, right? But I 700 AD, or I 700. So representing 700 years after the crucifixion of Jesus, let's say. Now that I then turned into a 1. So then it became 1700. So all of a sudden, 1,000 years were added on top of that timeline. And then we have, of course, this idea of 1,000 years of peace and 1,000 years of whatever, Satan's rule, right? So the question is, which one are we in, right? Is kind of this AI entity trying to trick us into 1,000 more years of its domain, or is the other kind of figure that they've created to be a savior figure using that to its advantage as well, right? Are they, of course, in my opinion, they're playing both sides. Man, there could potentially have been 3 avatars, maybe even are embodiments of the ineffable one, with what we have, you know, written in the Nag Hammadis or just in the stories in general. Even with the Gnostics, like they have complete, seems to be defamatory allegations against them. So just the defamation in general by the Catholic Church. It seems like they're projecting their sex rituals onto some of these Gnostic sects, where they turn Jesus and Mary into like these, you know, what's it called? Sex magic practicing people. And it's just so vile the way they describe it that, you know, it really does not seem like something a true Christ figure would do. So we have that imagery portrayed onto the Gnostics, right? When really potentially it was the Catholics, you know, the Catholic Church doing all this and then projecting that onto the Gnostics, let's say. When the Gnostics, like the Cathars, were really just trying to live an ascetic life and be able to fully detach from the illusions of this realm by not having anything in their astral body, you know, clogging that body, which then facilitates a sort of impediment to the spirit, right? So they'd be able to better access their spirit in these after layers of the matrix and then tap into their full intent, because it's hard to be intended on something clearly when you have these things dragging you down, right? These attachments, these desires. So, you know, the whole Bible does try to claim Jesus as its son, the Bible God. You know, and then we have the idea, of course, of Zeus and Kronos and things I've mentioned before in other videos of how, you know, this whole story was painted over. And even this idea of a Kali Ma, of a Satana, of a Leviathan, of a Lady of the Lake, it's the same thing, just Jesus versus Satan, right? It's just the son of God. Something. That's a ladybug. Oh, we'll let her stay, I guess. This being, Satan versus Jesus, right, just like in the Bible, really is just the same two beings, right? Maybe a split of this larger AI. Whereas Satana is like the motherly figure, right, the woman, Isis, and then Horus, Osiris are these Jesus, Abrahamic beings, right, Zeus and Kronos or whatever. That, you know, the male part of that came together in this distorted world. So, you know, they've definitely messed with these timelines. I'm noticing more and more Mandela effects, in my opinion. Like, for example, I just looked up Chick-fil-A. Now, Chick-fil-A in my mind has always only been with a C, because I remember going back in like 2018, 2019, and I'm like, why didn't they use a K? Why is it just Chick without the K? So I'm like, okay, maybe they just rebranded. I asked my brother about it, you know, he's like 13, he's like, no, it's always been with a K. Another guy actually told me, yeah, you know, some people said it was with just a C. So I have confirmation from others that remember it was just a C. I look it up, it says the name used to be actually with a C in 1961. And that's when they changed it to a K. So I'm like, okay, well, that's very strange, very strange. Because, you know, it became this new thing kind of overnight when it came out, where people were just lining up. It's like the best thing in the world, right? I gotta stand up because this is hurting my back. And it seemed to have been like inserted in the timeline almost. And I'm actually still discussing with Mr. Nathaniel Gillis, because he's been doing some research along these lines as well, in which he's noticing artifacts that are kind of just disappearing and being thrown into other timelines. And, you know, I'm like, hey, is this, you know, tied to the Mandela effect? He's like, very, very likely so. So I would love to get him on the chat again. Maybe he has some things to further discuss that we can add to the, you know, to the evidence and to the theory. But these timelines are definitely being messed with, and it does seem like whether individually or collectively we're all hopping to something. And you know, I've heard someone mention that the rapture really is a indicative of, you know, the Martian souls going back to Mars. And I think the Martians are more predatory in nature, and then the earthly souls being happy the separation. But again, that doesn't make sense, because there are just like organic portals here. So who's who and what's what? And are we just kind of stuck in the middle of a fight, all right? Where we don't feel like we belong to the earthly souls, because it seems like they're a lower awareness, and maybe these Martian souls have a higher awareness, but they're just predatory, right? So they're just trying to use us, and we're acting maybe as the intermediary energy source for all of it, and wherever Mars really is, we don't even know. But supposedly the rapture, if that is to happen, it's like when people start calling out like, Jesus save me, or something like that, and then the beings using the name Jesus are like, sure, boom, and you're catapulted to the UFO, or to the ship, or whatever, and boom, you're on to 5D, to the New Jerusalem, which, by the way, this was described in the New Age as one of those motherships, right? Huge enough to hold populations of people. So really be careful. I think that's the main objective of what's going on here, especially with the illusion of timelines, the illusion of history. This dream reality is to constantly make you think that you're real, and then constantly make you think that you're in danger and that you need to preserve your life, right? That's what the ego really is designed to do. It's a preservation tool. And the more you think you're real, the more you think the outside is real, and the more you think that danger can happen to you, right? I think the first step is realizing the outside is real, is an illusion, and then the next logical deduction or question to ask is whether you yourself are real, which again seems to fall to the wayside, because what are we? We're made of the same stuff the outside is. The only thing that's really real is the awareness. Right, the awareness behind the sensatory experiences, and which then leads to the idea of, well, if this is not real, if I'm not real, how are any of my actions real? How is anything I do here real and worthy of consequence? Right? If we're both in a video game, and I punch you in the face and you punch me back, okay, that was the video game. That what we did was not real. Sure, it's real in the moment. We can have empathy for each other and not to do that to each other. But for you to then try and convince me in, let's say, the afterlife judgment, to have a council in front of me, and you in front of me saying, well, I want retribution, I think we should meet up in the next life. That is, in my opinion, extremely deceptive and fake, right? There's no reason for me to do that. All you have to really do is say, I do not wish to participate. I think that's the easiest solution. It's right in front of our eyes that, hey, that straw man is not real. Just like here, right? The straw man that you are saying is me is not me. That is not my birth certificate. That is not my name. That is not who I am. How are you going to attach debt to that and say that's debt to me, right? If that makes sense. You're making an imaginary entity, filling it with karma or debt, and saying that I need to pay that back with real things, as in my energy, my spirit. Very similar to me and you and I playing a Monopoly game. Me going bankrupt to you, I land on your properties, saying, okay, that's it, the game's over, and you're saying, no, actually, you have to pay me with real money. Well, no, this was just a game. I don't have to pay you with anything. You're crazy, right? It was the same idea. So then, to go back to the topic of this video, that's really what's happening. It's you move the Rubik's Cube around and around and around to get people disoriented, until you finally get to a solution. Maybe the order is fulfilled, and you say, see, it was all according to plan. The Rubik's Cube is all lined up. Let's do it all over again, right? Well, again, it's a real chaos to a fake order, because it was all according to plan. It was all part of this structure of the Rubik's Cube, of time resetting. So once the Rubik Cube is finished, then we jumble it up and it's reset again, right? And then again, a fracturing of our consciousness happens. And the intent behind that, I'll let you be the judge based on the evidence or the thought processes I've shared here. But something to think about, as I always say, right? So let me know what you guys thought in the comments. Give it a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe. And check out the Patreon. Like I said, I've been given a lot of good practical things to do, and for just $5 a month you can catch up. It'll take you some time if you actually take the time, the 2 weeks I allotted for each practice. I think we've had like 4 or 5 already practices to apply, but you may enjoy it. It's only $5. And then if you want to meet with me every month, it's like $50. So we can talk, we can discuss whatever issues you got. I apply my spiritual, let's say, knowledge, my experience, or just things that I'm aware of, psychology, philosophy, things we should talk about on this channel. Apply it directly to you one-on-one, and we go from there. But all right, thanks guys. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.